Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Holly Matthews. I'm a self-development coach, I'm a speaker, I'm the founder of the Happy Me Project, and I'm a mom of 2 girls. I also happen to be a widow. And in this video, I want to share with you 6 things that I have learned about grief that nobody talks about. You will also notice that I'm trying to be a bit more professional and stuff in that I created some kind of setup. I've got my microphone, and then as soon as I've done that and, accentuated the fact that you can hear what I'm saying, there's somebody next door doing some work on the house. I mean, what a joke. Before, it was all muffled and stuff, and now here's me trying to, create a good sound quality and, can you hear it? Next door, I've decided to get some work done. I mean, this is the working from home lark. This is what goes on. And I could edit this out, but I'm not even going to edit out tea. I'm going to drink my coffee now either. Okay, so let's talk about this, because I know that some of you will be in the midst of grief right now. And when I talk about grief in this video, I don't always refer to it in this way. But when we talk about grief in this way, I'm talking about the loss of a person, so the death of a person. And rather than the grief of the end of a relationship or the loss of a year, like we've just had, some people, the loss of time and all of that, not that for this. For this video, we're talking specifically about when you go through the death of a person that you love and what that looks like. And let me share with you some of the things. The first thing, and I think this is probably the most important point, is that grief doesn't look like how we think it's going to look, how it looks like in the movies. It doesn't, the stages of grief, if you're about to lose somebody, if you know that somebody's going to die or you might do a quick Google search on grief and the 5 stages of grief will come up. Now, the 5 stages of grief are things that you will go through while you're grieving, but they're not something that happens in this linear process that I think we sometimes think, well, I've done this stage of grief, I'm onto this stage of grief, I've gone up a level, like I'm on the way out of this grief process. It just doesn't work like that. The stages of grief, I can't even remember what they all are, but there's anger, there's bargaining. That's the one I had to actually work out. What does that mean? Bargaining's where you kind of start thinking, well, I had a moment of bargaining, I've shared on this channel before, where when my husband had died, I suddenly thought, there must be a way we could bring him back. I mean, he was cremated, so probably not. But in my logical mind, I still was trying to bargain with whatever, bring him back. So that's bargaining. But all of these stages of grief, when you're actually in the midst of it, you could have them in one breath. You can go from anger to sadness to bargaining to whatever else is on that list in one moment. It doesn't work in that way, and it doesn't look like that. And nobody tells you that, because people try and do the proper this is what you have to do, and this is what you go through, and this is the process. And I think it's unhelpful because it doesn't work that way, and it's so personal to you. So even though I'm sharing my own experience on this video, you will walk through this in your own way, and that's okay. And in fact, it's exactly how it's supposed to be, because we're all individual people and everything looks different for all of us. So why should grief be any different? So whatever you're going through, whatever things are coming up for you as you're grieving, that's normal. That's normal for you. It might not be normal for me or the other person, but neither will my stuff be for you. And I have heard countless stories from different people who've experienced big loss, and they've told me all kinds of weird and wacky ways that they walk through their grief, and all of it is okay. So that's my first thing. It's not going to look like how you think it should look like. You don't have to fetch the black veil. You don't have to look like a grieving person. There's no such thing. Everybody looks different. Everybody deals with it differently. So let that go. Let the expectation go and just live your own experience. Number 2, grief will hit you at the most unexpected and probably really inconvenient times. it won't necessarily be in the moments when you think it should be. So it might not be the big moments. It might not be the person's birthday. It might not be the Christmases. It might not be those big moments, because I think there's an element of, and people will always want to protect you around those moments, I find. And actually it's never, for me, it's never those moments that hit me hard. It's I cleared out my shed the other day, and in there was a lot of stuff wrapped up from the house that my husband and I shared. We didn't share this house, we bought it together, but we didn't share it. And so there was a lot of stuff still wrapped up, hasn't been used in this house in reality. And I went in there, and there was what do you call them glass jars that you put stuff in, like tidy people put things in, and mason jars, is that what they're called? I might have made that up, someone can correct me in the comments. But anyway, it was one of these, and it had his handwriting on it, and we'd obviously put flour in it, plain flour, and he'd just written in his handwriting plain flour. It's those moments, it's in my shed unpacking some plain flour that makes the tears come. It's not necessarily the big moments, because my heart protects me from those. I get ready for those. I think that's going to be a sad time that I'm prepping. I wasn't ready for the plain flour in the shed. They're the moments that, the unsuspecting moments, the unsuspecting, the comment that somebody says that takes you off guard, that shocks you. I did something, and I won't say what it was because it would be too obvious who it was, but somebody around me, a well-meaning person, referenced something. How do I explain this without implicating the person? But anyway, somebody said something and was, with all the best intentions of the world, trying to bring in my experience into the conversation, when my talking about my husband's death wasn't what I was there to do. And the room that I was in wasn't necessarily aware that that was my experience. And so suddenly I was kind of forced into discussing something I didn't want to. And that triggered me and made me feel quite sad. So in terms of grief, it will surprise you when it rears its ugly head. Yeah. Number 3, people don't know what to say. Okay, people don't know what to say to you. It's awkward. We're not comfortable talking about grief, and people will say completely the wrong things at the wrong moment for you, and they will do it with the very best intentions, and they'll probably still get it wrong. And I've kind of from the very beginning acknowledged that and just thought, if it's coming from a place of good, even if I think, what you on? I will understand that it's coming from a place of good, and I will know that when I am around somebody who's grieving, I will bank that thought and think, don't say that, because that didn't feel good. And that's good, because you get lessons from going through your own personal grief where you can help other people, and you can probably say better things. People have said things to me. I've made a whole video on this, actually, on things not to say to a widow. You can go and look for that video. I'll try and link it below if I remember. But this, people will say things, they will impart their own beliefs about God and all that onto it. And they will say things that don't necessarily marry up. People say to me, oh, he'll be watching you. I mean, both me and my husband were he was an atheist. I'm an atheist. I don't believe, unless God comes and slaps me around the face and is like, I don't know if that's atheist or agnostic, but anyway, I'm that, whatever. I don't believe there's a puppet master. I don't, okay? I believe that energy is infinite. We live on in our memories and the through line of our energy and all of that. I don't believe there's somebody controlling everything. That actually makes me feel uncomfortable. And the thought of my husband looking down on me, like watching, it's very bizarre and weird. Doesn't do it for me, okay? Might do it for you, doesn't do it for me. So when people offer their own personal blueprint of the world, that's challenging, and it can be surprising if you've never gone through big loss before. Number 4, especially if it's somebody that was really, really big loss, more specifically somebody who was in your house, that can be more challenging, but you will feel guilty about some of the things that you will do post that person's death that perhaps they wouldn't have wanted you to do or wouldn't have liked. And I mean, it can be as simple, and I'm going from my experience of a partner's death. Not everybody's will be that. It might be a mum's, a dad's, a grandparent's. You will do something after they die that you know that they won't like. And there will be a level of guilt that shows up for you. I got an island in my kitchen, and my husband and I designed this kitchen together. And when I got that island, we had originally said we didn't want an island. And there was part of me that felt guilty, even though the reality is that it absolutely needed it. It was a great decision. Lovely. I know that he wouldn't have decided that. We wouldn't have come up with that. So there was part of me that felt a level of guilt, and that can be from so many things. And as the years go on, you feel less guilty, but that's something that you possibly don't imagine, that initially you will do things in a way that was the same as when they were there, and eventually you will begin to realize that you have to make decisions and choices on your own, and they're not there. So that's something that might surprise you. Number 5, and I guess this is not something anybody tells you, but it might be obvious, but you may have a lasting anxiety once somebody who has died who you really love. You might then find that you worry a lot about those around you, and small things can really trigger you in terms of health anxieties, or just worrying that they will die. And I wouldn't say this is something that I've really struggled with, but I definitely noticed, and my husband had brain cancer, and there was a lot of seizures and stuff like that around it. And there is elements of now my blueprint of the world, my model of the world is that people that you love, people who are even young people, can die. And that wasn't necessarily my blueprint of the world before. I understood that logically, but I hadn't lived it, and that's a different experience. Now I know that just because it's happened once doesn't mean it can't happen again, and that's a very scary place. And so you might be surprised at the intensity of that feeling during a global pandemic. There has been, certainly for my children in their grief process, the worry that I would die. I haven't had that worry, but they have had that worry because their experience of grief is that, well, people die, And so that might be something that would surprise you when you go into that new stage after losing somebody that you love. And number 6, not every moment of grief will be bad. You will laugh. You will have great experiences. You will have experiences that you wouldn't have had if that person hadn't have died. And some of those experiences will be wonderful. You will meet amazing people. You will do amazing things. And it doesn't mean that you should feel guilty about that. The whole process of grief is a very strange old process, and it can be mushed in with all kinds of feelings. But in my opinion, the person that has died, you obviously loved them and cared about them. Otherwise, you won't be watching this video about grief. And so I would imagine they would want you to have a good life. And personally, I believe that you honor their life by living your life fully. I know if you're watching this, you probably are going through grief, or have somebody around you that's going through grief. I'm sending you loads of love. It's not an easy process, and it's not a linear one, but you just have to keep walking. Every day does get easier. Some days you go back a step and you cha-cha slide it a little bit. That's okay, but you will come through this, and you will be surprised at the level of resilience that you have. I'm sending you lots of love. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you liked it, and do all the stuff that people say on YouTube to do, and I will see you on the next video. I'll speak to you all soon. Peace.